So today's sort of a show and tell type of thing. So we'll take a break after a little bit, let you guys stretch and everything, and we can talk about my mountain lion up here and some of the stories behind that. So other than that, I think everybody's probably here by now, right? A couple minutes after. So let's get going. So whenever I'm talking, if you guys have a question or whatever, interrupt me if I am speaking too fast, or again the airflow is too loud in here and you can't hear. Totally, stop me, ask me a question, what have you. That's all good. Today is really more of, just like Dr. Steele's initial lecture, this is also an initial lecture. This is really to sort of set the stage for the kind of real-world problems we deal with in conservation biology. And we could pick any number of critters, any number of organisms to do this. Mountain lions are one that we just happen to do various projects on over the years, and also is really close to our home. There are mountain lions right here on campus, and it just seems like an iconic thing. So 15 years ago when we started working on these things, they maybe weren't as in the media in the same way as they are now. So let's talk about this. So, first thing is this guy right here. So this is a painting. I used to be at Stanford University for several years, and this was right behind my office. There's a big art museum, and this was a big mural. This is the YouTube of the day. So this is about a, I want to say, 20-foot wide painting kind of thing. It's a big, huge oil painting, beautiful painting. And what this is Leland Stanford, the robber baron, one of the 4 modern robber barons that started California and did all the stuff with the railroad and all of that. He was a senator, he was a governor, all this and that. And he had a son, only one child with his wife, and that son died at an early age. So to memorialize his son, he created this university. And so it's actually not really called Stanford University, just like it's not really called Ventura. It's the city of San Buenaventura, right? So it's actually the Leland Stanford Junior University. So when I first went there, I went, wow, I went to a junior university? That's okay, that's cool. Anyway, this is articulating the story of mid-late 1800s, a rich, powerful person. And so what this person is doing is showing off all of his family and showing his power. He has servants right there, right? Everybody is in nice, pretty clothes when much of the population is in, dusty, dirty, unpaved conditions. We have black servants. It's a life of leisure, all this and that. This is actually the artist. He stuck himself in there because why wouldn't you, I guess? But underneath the little girls playing there, you see what looks like a leopard. It's actually a mountain lion. It's a mountain lion because these guys are showing essentially dominion over dangerous nature, and that was a classic example. Those guys in grizzly bears were the classic examples back in the day of wild California, dangerous California. So this guy was painted a little funkily because this took a long time, and the artists back in the day sort of did sketches and then went back and worked on the painting for a long time. So he actually didn't have a mountain lion skin in front of him when he was doing the painting. So he kind of looked up some books and said, oh, they should be spotted, and they aren't. But so we have all these interesting stories. Generally speaking, we have only a handful of ways of conceiving of these really iconic creatures. And they're basically here. You guys can maybe think of a few more, but this is, I think, these are the broad categories. So we have mountain lions as what? Driving across the Golden Gate Bridge, you're so wacky, right? That kind of like Disney movie type thing, right? Aw, shucks, right? Then we have sort of the modern, maybe, not to disparage our friends in Malibu, but maybe sort of like the classic Malibu type view of environmentalism, which is, oh, it's so pretty, so beautiful. Let's go to a park and look at it there, contained, right? In a controlled setting where we dictate how that organism looks, and then we all say how majestic it is, and we buy baubles about it and this and that. And then this one, you might not be able to read it in the back. This is a Calvin and Hobbes cartoon, and these guys are in bed, and And the cartoon reads, "I wonder why man was put on Earth. What's our purpose? Why are we here?" And then, wakes up and says, "Tiger food," and then smiles and goes back to sleep and goes, "Ugh," right? So this notion of threat, this notion of why are we here? We're here to kill you humans, right? So those three narratives are by far the most dominant ways that our society tends to view things like mountain lions. And if you just look around, you'll see that threat is really, we'll return to this theme, but threat is really the dominant view. So this is my son at the Grand Canyon a couple years ago holding the Zane Grey book, written again 100-odd years ago, more than 100 years ago, which was all about these guys, cowboys, real men, right, riding around horses, chewing, swearing. And the whole book is basically these guys going out and tracking and killing mountain lions, right? And that was portrayed as a noble thing to do. Some of you guys are in environmental literature with Dr. Monsma this semester. I've already had it, and you guys either have read or will read a similar story, a conversion story, Aldo Leopold's conversion story, when he looks into the wolf's eyes, the female wolf's eyes, and sees the green fire die in her eyes. And that was, his behavior up to that point was all very similar to this classic narrative of mountain lions as danger, mountain lions as threat. And then these are just a couple modern views from just driving around. So this is the cafe that they modeled cars after on Route 66 in Arizona. And if you go there, you find all kinds of dead things on the wall. And mountain lions are mounted on the wall, and there's so many, we got to put the television in front of them, kind of thing, right? So yeah, kill them, and then, don't worry about them. This is the only place that I've seen, there's a couple others too, but the only ones that I've actually personally visited that actually has a mountain lion mounted the way a mountain lion would typically look. And we'll talk about that when we get to my mountain lion up here. But this is how, if you were lucky enough to see a mountain lion, this is how you would see one, probably. Crouching, waiting for prey, this and that. That's never how they're mounted, right? They're always mounted as, pouncing on you and claws out and, jumping up towards you as threat. Okay, so before we get into too much farther down this road, we're going to watch a few minutes of video. So this was my sort of birth by fire when I first started working on mountain lions. So I'll play it for a second, and we might have to jack around with the sound so that you guys can hear it. It's also a little squished on this new compression filter. So bear with me for a second here.
A CBS 5 exclusive, a mountain lion loose in the suburbs. CBS 5 was the only station there when police took action. Tonight, angry claims that the animal didn't have to die. The immense power of an assault rifle in the wrong hands will track the spray of bullets that tore through the hood and hit 5 people.
Jacking around.
The most wanted man in Iraq scores a direct hit with a Volkswagen. Tonight, who he killed and how he did it. And a new study reveals the dark side of the low-carb craze. What happens to most dieters within a year? CBS 5 Eyewitness News starts now. Good evening to all of you. I'm Ken Bastida.
I'm Dana King. Remarkable pictures tonight only on CBS 5 as Palo Alto police take aim and take out a big lion in the suburbs. It happened near Embarcadero Road, not far from downtown Palo Alto. Tony Rusomano on the growing controversy over the decision to kill. Tony.
Dana, the top story tonight is about a cat caught in a tree. But what a catch. It ended very badly for the cat, a 110-pound mountain lion, and we have to warn you that this may be a very difficult story to watch. 8 hours after this mountain lion was first seen roaming the streets of residential Palo Alto, CBS found the animal sleeping in a tree, 20 feet above one of the Palo Alto police cars sent out to find it. What happened next is graphic and distirbing.
This happened live on that.
Ask him if he wants me to shoot it.
Call 36. Point out his rifle deployed. Dispatch.
Point out rifle deployed and 911. Oh, back on the front.
The big cat fell as it turned and died.
When the first officer saw it in the tree, they called for a tranquilizer gun that we had out here. While the gun was en route, the animal started to run from the officer.
However, our pictures show the animal only raising its head slightly when it was shot.
God damn it.
We showed the video to a local member of an animal rights group.
I think it's absolutely atrocious the way the police behave, because obviously the animal wasn't a threat to anyone. It wasn't a tree.
White roses and a note protesting the shooting were left at the scene by a woman and her 2 young sons.
It would be better if they tranquilized it.
But there are 2 schools within a mile.
I'm still shaking over it. I'm sad they had to shoot it. The kids will be home soon from school. That would have been awful.
Linda Furrier's dog chased the mountain lion up the tree, while Linda's 2-year-old child played in the backyard.
It is a pity to lose a beautiful animal, but how would we have all had that animal attacked a child?
The body and stomach contents of the 110-pound male mountain lion will be examined tomorrow for clues as to why it came into a residential neighborhood. Just last month, Livermore police shot and killed a man at the gates of the Lawrence Livermore lab after Fish and Game agents said they could not safely tranquilize it. A study of the carcass found the Livermore lion had been injured, probably hit by a car. Now, wildlife experts say mountain lion sightings are becoming more frequent in California as the animals adapt to life near urban areas. In the Bay Area, about 4 or 5 mountain lions are killed each year under Fish and Game permits after they become a threat. Dana?
All right, in Palo Alto.
Okay, we're going to watch a couple more videos in a second, but let me just explain what happened. So, this is everything. This is the trifecta, right? There's little kids saying, "Don't hurt it," and there's people saying, "It's coming near a school," and there's animal rights activists, and the police saying we didn't do anything wrong, and it's everything, right? And this is the modern conservation world in which we live in. It's very easy for whatever happens, especially if it's a controversial thing, it'll be up on YouTube almost instantly, and all of a sudden narratives will begin. Typically, narratives will begin to be spun up before people have the complete facts. Okay, so before I watch the rest of the videos, I'll tell you what happened. So this is Palo Alto. This is an area similar to Thousand Oaks kind of thing, right? Or maybe Ojai, not more urbanized than Ojai, but you know, that kind of deal where we have a lot of open space, a lot of coastal mountains and things around us. So where did it start with? The gosh darn UPS dude. It's always the UPS dude or the FedEx guy. I swear to God, about 90% of all these things start with these guys. So it's early morning, and also just like here in Ventura County, one of the key features of Palo Alto is there's a river, a stream, perennial stream that goes from the hills down, in this case, to the San Francisco Bay. And what probably happened was this. These creeks, these rivers are important wildlife corridors, ways for wildlife to move around. So they'll jump in the river or the bank, and they'll go down, and then they'll kind of pop back up and look for some prey or that kind of stuff, right? So the creeks and rivers are oftentimes, riparian corridors or wetlands are oftentimes highways for wildlife movement. So it seems pretty likely was this guy jumped on this highway, went down, popped out, and all of a sudden was what? In downtown Palo Alto, and he turns around and goes, what? And he goes, what? And what? And he can't figure, you know, he's in an urban setting then. So the first call is at about 4 in the morning when this delivery truck driver is driving through, and he's what? And he calls in, there's a mountain lion in the street. And the guy's like, are you smoking? He's like, I'm not smoking, and blah, blah, blah. So boom. Then throughout the morning, more and more calls come in. This is the first activation. We have this now, and you guys have all heard this as a safety thing that our campus has installed, but this notion of a reverse 911. It had just been installed in the city of Palo Alto, right? Which is normally we think of 911, we call the emergency services folks. This is where they can push out warning stuff. So they activate this phone thing and call everybody in the city and say, stay at home, shelter in place, do not go outside. There is a dangerous mountain lion on the loose. They cancel all the police folks' vacations. Everybody has, it's like a national emergency. Everybody has to come in. So now there's people all over the place. The morning goes on. Goes on, goes on. Can't find the mountain lion. Can't find the mountain lion. Every once in a while there's a call somewhere and they can't find it, can't find it, can't find it, can't find it. As this is going on, that fat dog that you guys all saw that was massively dangerous, right? the lady in that last image there, she was staying home with her young children, and she was doing laundry. And the laundry machine was in the garage, and she was in the garage, and the door to the garden was open. And as she's doing the laundry, the dog starts going, and she's like, shut up! And the dog, she's like, shut up! And so finally the dog, walks outside. So the dog trees the mountain lion. So that's how when we need to capture a mountain lion, to put a collar on him, or if we need to kill one or what have you, or if you're a hunter in others, not legal in California, we'll talk about this, but other states, if you want to hunt, use dogs. Mountain lions cannot stand dogs. They're freaked out of dogs. So even that dog that would have gotten killed if you actually went to a fight with that mountain lion, freaked out. So the dog, and the mountain lion ran up a tree and just hung out, went to sleep. Okay, now going on. Now it's about midday. No kids are allowed to go on recess. All the kids are indoors. Kids are getting antsy. Now all the moms and the parents and everybody are, can I pick up my kid? Oh my God, right? And so this panic is starting to spread. It's approaching noon, and so the local CBS affiliate all the local channels are covering this live. Why? Because what the hell else are you going to do? It's May, right? There's nothing exciting going on. So they're covering it live. Do you see anything? No, there's a guy tying a shoe. Oh my God, what kind of shoe, right? So super boring coverage. Then that reporter you just saw, was sitting in a street, leaning against his news truck. And he has cameramen. And they're like, when are they going to get the call? When are they going to find this thing? And it's almost exactly noon. And he looks over, and there's unfortunately, so this was all video that I got from the local news station. I tried to get the raw feed. They wouldn't give me the raw feed. So the raw feed shows, so this reporter looks up, and he sees, so Palo Alto is a tree city, right? So all these big old 100, 150-year-old trees, great, nice, big branches going over the road. The mountain lion, he looks up, there's a cop, and unfortunately he's a heavyset cop, and he's eating a pastry, unfortunately. And so he's sitting there, and he's leaning against his hood, and he's eating a pastry, and right, like 5 feet above his head or like 10 feet above his head is the mountain lion sleeping. So the reporter sees it, he's like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. So instead of saying, look out, dude, there's a mountain lion over here, he turns to his camera guy and says, turn the fucking camera on and call the station. And so they start feeding it in. And so then the guy's filming, and then the reporter goes, sir, officer. And the guy's like, yeah. He's got like powdered stuff on his face, like, yeah. And he says, look up. And they go, oh my God. And so then the guy calls, and then everybody, rah, right? And so what they showed you here, which is this is the evening news feed, what they showed you was the SWAT team walking up. That lady was a member of was a sharpshooter from the SWAT team, walks up and says, can I shoot it? And mountain lion is asleep, right? And the mountain's like, what? And raises his head, and then bang, she shoots it, falls off, runs a couple feet, and dies. So now we're going to hear the follow-up, some of the follow-up news coverage. Nothing in the history, at least when I was there, but I don't think anything since, nothing in the history of the Palo Alto Police Department has ever led to more complaints. Not white officer shooting poor black guy, not profiling, not whatever you want to pick. So the next day they got something like 20,000 emails from around the country, because this was picked up live by all these other affiliates in Florida and in New York. So it became this huge thing, okay? So we'll talk about it more in a second, but let's watch another couple, few more videos here.
Tony Russomanno, thank you.
This is the next day, I think, this one.
CBS 5 Eyewitness News, now.
Misery loves company. The rest of the country finally feels our pain at the pump. Prices hit $2 nationwide. We're paying even more here in the Bay Area. What's behind the massive spike? The new investigation into price gouging in California.
A San Francisco Safeway leaves one man dead and police searching for a possible connection to another murder.
And outrage over the shooting of a mountain lion in a Palo Alto neighborhood. Why police say they had no other choice but to shoot and kill. What may have driven the animal of the wilderness.
Up, and away. Now, animal rights advocates are crying foul over the killing of a mountain lion that was prowling in Palo Alto. Police shot the big cat out of a tree at Walnut Drive and Walter Hayes Way. Ramirez explains why the mountain lion may have wandered so far into civilization.
The Palo Alto Police Department has been swamped with calls protesting their shooting of a mountain lion yesterday. The graphic footage captured exclusively by a CBS 5 camera showed what happened when the animal wandered too far into a neighborhood in the heart of the city. Concerned calls have been coming in from around the country. One police captain called it the most vocal response to any officer-involved shooting he's seen, whether they've been animal or human.
I've been here 29 years, and I know of a couple of officer-involved shootings in the last 5 years, and I don't remember receiving as much feedback to our action as we are receiving as a result of this.
They could have tranquilized it and gone from there. That would have been a better solution than just shooting it.
One animal rights group says officers acted too quickly and that the big cat could have been spared if the department had been better prepared.
Was there something that could have been done differently? And clearly, people, I think locally, but across the country, are concerned about this and want to see these agencies come up with better alternatives.
Police say calls had been made for a tranquilizer gun, but stand by the decision to kill the animal because they say it posed an immediate threat to public safety.
It was justified in that the animal posed a risk, safety to the community. It was not something that we could contain, being as it would be able to leap fences, jump trees.
I have seen tranquilizers work in 15 seconds, and I have seen them never work.
Fish and Game officials conducted a necropsy today to see if the animal's carcass could yield any as to how or why it wandered so far from open spaces and where most of its natural prey lives. The animal was a 3-year-old male in good condition, although slightly underweight at 99 pounds, and its stomach was empty. Officials say it could have been forced out of the wild by a more dominant male and probably followed San Francisco Creek or other creeks leading from the hills into town, looking for food and water, just trying to survive.
Food, water, shelter, and they can be concealed as they move into these areas.
We're joining you now live from Palo Alto, where people having flowers and notes at the spot where the mountain lion fell yesterday. You know, we've been doing a lot of interviews here, Kate, over these last couple of days, and no one that we've talked to is happy that this mountain lion was killed, although some people think it was justified. Some people will never be that killing a mountain lion was the right thing to do.
All right, thank you, Lynn. That's Lynn Ramirez in Palo Alto.
One more.
The Palo Alto Police Department says it is inundated with complaints following yesterday's shooting of a mountain lion. While officials tell us that it was a clear-cut public safety issue, others wonder if the big cat could have been spared. Channel 2 South Bay Bureau Chief Lloyd LaCuesta is in Palo Alto. He's got tonight's up. Lloyd?
Leslie, I'm at the corner of Walter Hayes and Walnut Streets in Palo Alto, and it was off a limb on that tree that police shot and killed a mountain lion yesterday. Tonight at the base of the tree, a memorial has grown with people leaving notes that the cougar could have been saved. And throughout today, people came to mourn the animal's passing.
Beautiful spirit that you are.
Two ministers of the United Church of Christ traveled from Oakland to the site tonight and conducted a memorial service.
I came to pray for the soul of the cat. I came to pray for the souls of those involved with the killing of the cat.
We're the invasive species. We're the ones who are needing to learn to live with those who have been here far longer than we have.
Today, Fish and Game the results of a necropsy conducted on the animal. It was a 3-year-old adult male weighing 99 pounds. Authorities say it showed no obvious signs of health problems, but its stomach was empty and it was probably hungry. No determination could be made if it was the same animal which may have attacked in the hills above Stanford in recent weeks. But the experts say because of its weight, it may not have been able to fend for itself against bigger mountain lions. Palo Alto police say they received 200 calls and emails today about the shooting.
There was a risk, but I think that it hadn't hurt it. They should have done something to get out of killing it.
They probably did make the right decision, but I struggle with that also because all day I've been very sad for the mountain lion.
We wonder whether it was necessary to proceed so rapidly to a killing.
Palo Alto police today said the animal was shot because it was a hazard to the community. Fish and Game experts told police that if they had used a tranquilizer dart, it would have taken as long as 30 minutes for the drug to work. Fish and Game told us over the phone it was the right decision.
We don't tranquilize lion.
moving around in a residential area. The whole idea is to make sure that mountain lion does not hurt anybody.
Tonight, we talked to the owner of the dog that drove the mountain lion up the tree. She says the dog and police may have saved her and her 4 children from harm.
I'll say it's a pity that an animal is, a beautiful animal is dead, but I wonder how the community would have reacted had that animal killed a human.
Fish and Game officials say what happened here yesterday could very well occur again south. Live in Palo Alto, Lloyd LaCuesta, KTVU Channel 2 News.
Lloyd, thank you.
Okay. A little more detail, but again, all those, it's a Rorschach test almost, right? Everybody's seeing what they want to, and it's public safety threat, and it's all that stuff. And so, again, the mountain lion was up in the tree, these guys shot it, and then it was absconded away. And so we could talk about how we got mine later, but I tried to get this mountain lion, and I was not allowed. What we used to call California Fish and Game, which is now called California Fish and Wildlife, have a network of labs across the state of California to deal with wildlife issues that can do necropsies and look for disease, if a dog bit you and we were worried if it had rabies, that kind of stuff. And so our regional, for up there, the regional lab facilities in Santa Cruz. And normally they would have taken it to Santa Cruz, but this was such a high profile thing, they took it straight to Sacramento, which as far as I know was never done before, and was necropsied by the state veterinarian, the head person of all this stuff. And so so they wanted to get it away. They didn't want it to be around and causing stuff. So this leads, as we just saw a few examples here, all kinds of massive media coverage, newspaper stuff, radio, talk show programs on it, just everywhere, and it's ubiquitous. For a long time, it dominates the narrative. And very quickly, it engenders strong emotions. Probably, maybe you guys felt some strong emotions. That looks horrible, no matter what, if it was justified or not, it just looks horrible, right? Slaughtering an animal like that doesn't make any, or most people, doesn't make most people feel well. And we have this spectrum that we approach our conservation issues with. It's really, really important to do that and to not take the traditional approach of a biologist or a geologist or whatever when we have these hazards, to really understand that there are all these stakeholders here. And that your job as a conservation professional, should you guys continue to be one, or even if you guys don't become a conservation professional, you just take this one class and you're like, this sucks, I'm not doing this ever again. You guys will now have some training in this. And so when these situations emerge, and they will emerge, you are going to have to probably be the person that has to try to be the adult in the conversation and say, hey, let's chill out for a second. Let's see if we can first get all our facts before we let the strong emotions run away with us. So I mean, the next day, these guys had some people had done a prayer service seance. They determined the animal's name was Braveheart and that he was a very peaceful, and all of a sudden, what? And this stuff is just going right and left. Immediately, the cops look like jerks, right? The cops look like they walked on up, can I shoot it? Bang, right? And then the spokesperson said, oh, we checked first, and then it was totally a threat, right? So it looks like those guys are jerks. They had no training. Before this, they had no training on how to deal with wildlife. A situation like this. Their mountain lion training consisted of, when this showed up in town, a guy literally Googled mountain lion blah, 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 and up came the last place one of these situations happened, and they called the police department that was at that previous city, said, what'd you guys do? They said, we shot it. I'm like, okay, check, boom, right? So it's, you know, these guys didn't have the training and all this and that. Then the other narrative that's coming up, is it here or? Yeah. The last narrative I'll just touch on really quickly is this notion of all that stuff you heard about tranquilizer stuff. Right? That was mostly baloney, almost everything you heard there. The real story was they called for a tranquilizer gun. It's a rifle that shoots a dart. Because of state budget cuts, because of our inept political leadership and inability to do budgeting as adults, we have one tranquilizer gun for this region. That one tranquilizer gun had a broken firing pin, a $100 firing pin. There was no budget to buy another firing pin that year. So there actually was no, so there was no ability to tranquilize it. So all this talk about, I've seen it happen in 15 minutes, that's not the real story. The real story is they couldn't if they wanted to. But does that make the fish and game guys like total jerks? No, I mean they're doing the best they can. My neighbor at the time at my office at Stanford was the former head of the EPA of Mexico, and one of the things he did was study a lot of large carnivores. So they tranquilize guys with the little dart and a piece of PVC. So if they had called us, we probably could have tranquilized that thing no problem. It was right there. It's on a street. It's not like down in a crazy glen or whatever. The other thing to say is, it is true that it's hard to figure out how to anesthetize these critters. You have to look at the size of the critter and guesstimate the weight, and then base your dosage. If you give it too much, they'll die. They'll stop breathing, and then their heart will stop working. And if you don't do it enough, they'll be robust. But where that's really a problem is when we do stuff like grizzly bears, which can be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And so it's sometimes hard. When you're looking at an animal like this, that's pretty obvious what its weight range is. If you had maybe high school education, you could figure out the correct dosage. The other thing to say is, why not try it, right? So in this case, had we had a device to anesthetize the critter, you got a SWAT team around you, right? I mean, their whole deal is they just practice shooting things that are moving and dangerous, right? So if we shot the critter and it started to bolt, you could have offed him. So that's sort of the factual background. The last little bit I'll say that had people on edge was this was probably part of a pattern. We'll never know because the animal was destroyed that next day without taking any genetic samples or anything. But what we had was early, again, just like Thousand Oaks or Westlake Village or any of these places, some of the areas in Camarillo, there's stables all up towards the hills. And so the previous couple weeks, we had a bunch of attacks of horses. So horses started getting attacked by a mountain lion. And that is effing weird. Mountain lions do not attack horses. There's only two kind of mountain lions that would attack a horse, and these are basically the types of mountain lions that we'll hear when we talk about these problems with people and nuisance animals the rest of today's lecture. There's a regular adult normal mountain lion doesn't mess with you and wouldn't mess with you, assuming you're more than 2 feet tall. There's two categories. One, a juvenile who's just gotten his or her butt kicked and is dispersing, and is a naive hunter, doesn't know what to do. If a mountain lion tries to attack a horse, the horse is going to kick it in the head and kill it. So it's not a smart thing to do. So it's one, it's like, ooh, look, let me go get that and whack. The other option, and that's sort of, kids being kids, stupid teenager kind of stuff. The more dangerous situation is typically the opposite end of the spectrum, where we have a very old individual who's just crazy old, right? Teeth are getting worn down, not very fast, and is hungry and getting desperate for food. So those two types of critters are the ones that typically go into these areas or do silly things like attack a horse or whatever. So that was the background. So the people that lived towards the hills were all very nervous. So when they heard there's a mountain lion going around, they were like, oh my God, it's the horse killer. It didn't actually kill a horse, but all that stuff. So that's the context for this. A little more general, a little more broadly, this situation illustrates, like almost all of our conservation's biology situations will, there's a real important difference between reality and what people perceive, what they think reality is. So perception versus reality, right? And there's all kinds of things. You just look through the paper today, the horrible insanity that's happening in Paris and bioterrorism and oh my God there's all these threats we got to worry about, right? Almost all that stuff is not a rational way to figure out risk. All kinds of articles about mountain lions, all kinds of stories about mountain lions. This is much more dangerous than mountain lions ever will be. This is West Nile virus. West Nile virus is a technically viruses aren't species, but it's basically a non-native species introduced into the U.S., first in New Jersey, first identified in 1999. So very recent introduction. It's spread across the U.S. This data I'm showing you right here is only for California. So these are the amount of confirmed human cases. So the first one was in 2000. The first confirmed human case was 2004. It showed up the year before, but we didn't infect any people that we know of. And so, check out hundreds of people infected. It goes up and down with water and different things, but lots and lots of people every year are falling ill from this disease. And these are the only ones we've confirmed. Of this, just in California, just since 2004, 145 people have died as of the end of 2014, a couple weeks ago. A gazillion more than have ever died from mountain lions, right? But you don't, when we're going out to go hiking, you see these signs, watch out for mountain lions, watch out for this. Rarely do you see things for more mundane risks, but that are actually greater risks. Here's another one, Lyme's disease, right? Lyme disease, which is borne by a tick. The tick doesn't actually give you the disease, but the tick harbors the organism that gets you sick. And so essentially all counties, or almost all counties in California, have either the tick or the parasite or both. And so maybe you'll occasionally see a Lyme disease thing, but mostly you see this, mountain lion area, mountain lion. So this is my restoration I was doing at the time. The next day, everything was blanketed with mountain lion warnings. And then again, the real risk is this. So this is another story. This one happened in Orange County. This was actually a rare fatality. But with this article is about people starting to pack guns because mountain lions, right? So I would suggest to you that a much more dangerous thing is people's reaction to this supposed conservation threat. So up at Stanford, I had this one side of a hillside I was restoring. On the other side, it was leased to a rancher whose family had been ranching this area for well over 80 years. Unfortunately, his children were not interested in being ranchers, so he was running it by himself. And he's a great guy, but he fell off his horse the year and a half before this. And so you'd be talking to him, hey, Roger, how's it going? And he just kind of trail off and look up, and you're like, you okay? And a couple seconds later, he'd come back, right? Yeah, blah. So right after the mountain lion thing started happening, I started noticing he started carrying the back of his pickup a rifle, right? And so I said, oh, hey, what's that rifle for? And he said, for the kids. I said, the what? He said, yeah, the kids. So on the other side of the hill, there was a reservoir that the university used to get water. And kids being kids, they would sometimes go out there, sneak out at night, and do things kids do, skinny dip and do things like that, right? And so it was making him annoyed. And so once the mountain lion thing happened, and there was all this sort of awareness about where people are going, he started paying attention. He started seeing these kids. So he said, I use it for the kids. I said, oh, you put rock salt in it, or you use a blank? He goes, nope. I said, well, you don't actually shoot towards the kids. Like, no, I shoot over their heads. I'm like, what? And so he's like a mile away, and he's like, and it's the guy that, right? So after that, I'm like, screw that. So we started making sawhorses whenever we're doing work, and then put signs right on the trail saying, we're off the trail. The shaking bush, don't shoot the bush. So that is the real challenge. And oftentimes with these conservation things that deal with predators in particular, people's response is actually usually much more dangerous than the original, whatever the level of the predator's threat to begin with, it's usually much more dangerous. Okay, so we see this, and you can click through these examples if you want, but let's say, well, maybe we won't just now. Basically, this is the dominant narrative, which is threat, danger, threat, danger, threat, danger. This is the one slide I didn't update yet. So this is as of a couple years ago, but the point still stands. So these are how many people have died from these different events in the continental United States since 1900. About 8,000 people died from getting hit by lightning. About 3,500 people died from anaphylactic shock from being stung by a bee or a wasp. About 1,200 people or so have died by being mauled by a domestic dog. This is old, right? So, but this is the whole U.S. Over 1,000 people as of a couple years ago. It's more like over 2,000 now, have died because of West Nile. Rattlesnakes, about 430. Mountain lions, as of this writing, 15, right? Yet it's this huge thing that expends so much of our energy and time and stuff. Okay, let's take a break and let's talk a little bit about the ecology of these critters. Okay, so first, this map is the historic distribution of Puma concolor. So all over essentially the western parts of North America and a little teeny bit in Florida. These guys are sexually dimorphic, so as adults, the males and females appear different, physically different. Generally, the male is about 50% heavier, 25 to 50% heavier. And the key thing is this tail right here. So the tail is the key diagnostic characteristic. There's nothing on our continent that's like this. The tail is about 1/3 of the total body length. That's the key differentiator with other things you might think you see. The territories range tremendously in size. So these guys are territorial. And the size of their territory is primarily determined by what the food base is there. So if there's lots of food, they'll have a relatively small area. If it's scarce or not really high quality prey, then they will have on average a larger territory. These guys are asocial. Anybody know what asocial means? Right. So typically they avoid one another, as compared to a social, like wolves or somebody would come together. These guys, if adults come together, they'll try to kill each other. The only time adults will come together will be a male and female when the female's in estrus, and they'll mate very quickly, and that's it. Yeah, so as I said, formerly it was the widest ranging terrestrial mammal in the U.S., actually North America. We think in the wild they live about a decade. In captivity they can live considerably longer. So we've had individuals in the Moore Park Zoo and other places for much longer than 10 years. Something like maybe as much as 25 years. The most common is when the mom gets pregnant, she has a litter of 2 cubs. Very rarely 3. I'll show you an example that's super rare, we think. And they stay with mom for about 1.5 years. And initially they're just nursing with her, and then she kind of kills, and then she brings them food, and then eventually they kind of go on kills with her, that sort of story. They are, as of now, they are our largest carnivore. They're our biggest terrestrial apex predator since we drove grizzly bears extinct about 100 years or so ago, not quite 100 years ago. The dominant feature about these guys is that they're crepuscular. They are a dawn and dusk thing. They're really, really good when it's not pitch black and it's not bright sun. Their eyes and their vision and everything is optimized for that gray time. Most mammals, you have crap vision. You have crap dawn and dusk vision. You have okay night vision. You have great daytime vision. These guys are in that sweet spot. So they're really most active in terms of hunting in the early morning and the late afternoon, when the sun is just going down, like you're driving to school for that class and you can't quite see and you're squinting, and that they're like in heaven right there. Okay. Questions about that? All right, cool. So this is the official state of California's published habitat map for mountain lions. Anybody see a pattern there? Julie, what do you see? Right. So what's that? Nobody likes Central California. Even the mountain lions say it's too hot. So right. So this is primarily because it's all ag stuff, and there's not really food for them per se there. Historically, they probably weren't super abundant here because this used to be a massive wetland, and while they can go through wetlands, it's a little bit tough. And then what about this one? Right. So this is primarily not a lot of food for them there. But everywhere else, coastal zone, Sierras, crazy up north, crazy down south, they can be pretty much everywhere. So here's a rare shot of an individual, a beautiful shot. This was taken I think this was taken in Yellowstone. But just great shot of all the key features. So clearly a cat. Who has cats? A few of you guys? Okay. So clearly a cat, the classic feline head. Relatively speaking, big paws. And then again, this characteristic long gigantor tail trailing out behind. So here are some shots of these guys in their habitat. So here's one in the desert. If you were lucky enough to see one, it would probably be in this kind of context, slinking around, right? They're not like you see them in the trainer videos on some Hollywood movie. They're low to the ground. They're staying low. This is a crazy picture from up in the Pacific Northwest, and that deer is screwed, right? Well, at least he was until the flash went off in the camera. But right, this is very rare. Mountain lions don't typically hunt like this. This is how you might think of a African lion or something like that. This is not how these guys are sit and wait predators. They're not really a track you down kind of predator. Here's one on a kill in the snow. And so this is a fresh kill and taking some bites. This is one that has just made a kill. Their behavior appears to have been driven by spending thousands of years alongside a grizzly bear that would kick its butt. The grizzly bear that has a fantastic sense of smell. Grizzly bears that'll eat anything. So the typical model, these guys bounce on will wait. They will go and they'll hang out somewhere, usually on an overhanging rock or overhanging a branch or something like that over a game trail. They usually kind of chill there for a while and watch and sort of get the pattern down. And so, okay, here's this deer. It might watch for many days. And then when the critter comes down, they jump down and they either go right under the neck and bite and suffocate the prey, or they bite on the back of the neck and try to snap the vertebrae. And boom, quick. Generally speaking, if the guy jumped down and he kind of slid and the prey was like, whoop, and ran, he might chase a little bit, but they're not like cheetahs that chase down their prey. So that once that thing would run, it would probably be like, damn it, and walk back. Kill the thing, drag it off the trail. So maybe 10 to 20 feet off the trail. Then dig, just like your cats. Some of you guys have cats. They when they go to the bathroom, they kind of scratch. So make a little scratch, drag the thing into it, and then just like this guy's doing, he just killed the deer. He's covering up the prey with stuff, leaf litter, grass, and then the cat runs away. And then it's variable. It depends on a bunch of factors. But an hour or two later, it kind of comes back, like, anybody here? And then unburies it, eats for a couple minutes, and then reburies it and runs away. And then over the course of a couple days, we'll come back and consume it over time. Again, presumably because that was in response to trying to hide it from the other top guy that would come kick his butt and take that prey from him. Okay, so that's the basic story of the ecology of these guys. Let's look at a couple other cameras. So I just told you guys, I told you the nerdy professor line is to stuff, and so I'll just show you that things don't always work that way. So this is a camera trap from up in, I think this one's up in Canada. And so here's a kill, and there's a mountain lion eating, and then, sort of bearing, uncovering, cruising around, blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, 1, 2, 3, 4 kittens. So I just said they typically have 2, maybe 3. Apparently they can also have 4, right? So we think this is unusual and is probably a response to really high prey availability in this particular area. But don't know. But we think this is uncommon. This is another example saying that we totally know what we're talking about. This is a different place. This is up in Washington State. And this we think was also, we don't know, but the best guess is this was driven by food. It was a really poor prey year. And so it seems to have happened as this one adult made a kill, and then some other guys were so starving, like, I'm gonna eat that. And so clearly from this picture, this guy looks pissed, right? But these guys are just chilling. Nobody's ever seen in the wild this many mountain lions get together before. So that, not sure, but it may portend something about a changing environment, changing prey availability, changing climate, stuff like that. We don't know. But when this first happened, a lot of people said this is BS. All the discussion boards I'm a part of, most people were convinced it was photoshopped, that this wasn't real. This couldn't possibly, is so different from the regular biology that people perceive. So there we go. Okay, so they're asocial in theory, unless maybe things get weird, then maybe they can sort of, for at least a little while, be sort of social. Okay, let's start talking about management, then we'll take a break, because people probably need to stretch. Julie?
Quick question. Can you tell from looking at the picture before cubs that they're from the same litter, or could it be two?
No, it could be 2 from 2, yeah. Yeah, just from looking, you can't tell. Unless there was maybe some genetic deformity where, I don't know, somebody's ear was bent or something, but that wasn't the case on those, I don't think. All right, so that's the background. Before we ever get into a situation, whatever it is this semester with our reading, with whatever, first step, make sure you guys understand the facts. Don't run into one of these controversies. Don't run into the animal advocates. Don't run into the people screaming about their kids. Don't go talk to the cops. First, make sure you get the facts straight. You know the basic biology of the situation, the basic lay of the land of the ecosystem you're talking about. So let's talk about, okay, so I just gave that to you in a nutshell, the quick and dirty. Now let's talk about, so first is what's the ecology, the next is what's the management history of this resource been? Those two things are necessary to really provide informed, well there's other things too, but those are the starter ingredients to have an effective management strategy for whatever, an endangered plant or whatever. Okay. So let's step back about 10,000 years or so ago with different glaciation events and eras. These guys probably expanded and contracted their territory and over time and this and that. But as far as we humans are concerned, since we've been around, they've been more or less since we've been around in California, we think at least 14,000, 15,000. What's our Santa Rosa guy? Anybody remember? The oldest man in North America that we've just. Yeah, but what is it? 15,000? No. Okay. Okay. So, but Clovis is 14, right? Well, anyway. Okay. All right. So I'll check that. Let's check that. But at least in the last several, many thousands of years, we've had a roughly, we believe, stable mountain lion population. Before 1907 in California, they were just a thing, right? The Stanfords blew them away when they wanted to, and people shot them, but they were part of the landscape. Then in 1907, we began our concerted, active management of this resource. So they became a so-called bountied predator. So that means the government of California, the state of California, would pay you for every dead individual you brought to them. And they typically do it by bringing a paw. So babies didn't count. The best thing to do was to shoot a baby, because then the mom would stay and be angry and stuff. So all the data that we'll talk about here, the numbers are typically adults that we're talking about, not adults plus juveniles. So okay, so of adults that we know were killed, and it stayed that way up to 1963, up to when Gidget was a surfer girl. Right? This is very modern, this policy. So for almost 60 years, we were killing these folks, and on the order of at least 12,500 individuals were confirmed, adults were confirmed killed. And the most in any one year was as many as 350 individuals. We were doing our best to drive this species to extinction. We really, really, really wanted to get this thing out of here. Then in 1963, because their numbers were lower and there was this rising, people maybe worried about the environment and things of that nature, we changed our policy. So we have a brief 6-year period where they're nothing. We don't manage them. We stop the bounty program, but we don't do any active management. So there's just this weird sort of downtime period. For the next couple years, they briefly, between 69 and 72, become a so-called game animal, meaning just like deer are now. You want to hunt one? Cool. You give me money. You give the state money. They'll issue a hunting license or a hunting tag, and you could try to go and get one. Just to be clear, we'll talk about this later in the semester, but a tag is an opportunity. So a fishing license, you get a fishing license and you just got it, right? And you go and you fish, you get your daily limit, and you're good. You could get your daily limit every single day. A tag is a chance, an opportunity to try to go kill one. But if you don't, and only one, and if you're incompetent or you're bad lucked or whatever the deal is, you still pay the money even though you don't necessarily get one. So that's what a tag is, or a hunting tag. So over this brief couple-year period, almost 5,000 people say, yep, I want to shoot one of those. So they've been a popular hunting item for a target for a long time. In this brief period, we killed somewhere around 118 individuals. Then we entered the modern era. The modern era began in California, began in 1972 for mountain lions. So in this era, we decided that we would no longer hunt them. And we will allow state-sanctioned killing of them if they become a nuisance. If, let's say, they continually attacked livestock, or if they threatened you, or what have you. So that killing is what's known as depredation. And so depredation permits are issued. The vast majority of depredation permits are issued after the fact. So for example, in that Palo Alto mountain lion situation, that police officer shot that mountain lion. She just shot it. Boom. She didn't have a permit. But then the next week, or whenever it was, the state of California said, oh yeah, that was a threat, and they retroactively gave a permit to, it's okay to go ahead and do it. If you, just for the hell of it, went up and said, I'm gonna kill this thing, and bang, shot it, you would not get a depredation permit, unless there was some evidence that it was threatening you or your family, or something like that. Okay, so I'll mention these two things, and then we'll take our little break so we can have a stretch. So before we click off the slide, just to finish up, we then hit the 90s, and the 90s when it starts getting interesting in our state with regards to mountain lion management, which is people decide, hey, what really was happening was the hunters were getting pissed. And the hunters are saying, we want to shoot these things. And they haven't been able to hunt for a long time, right? I think at least in ESRM, maybe in bio and other places, there's this strange thing, to me it's strange, where there's sort of an anti-hunting thing that sometimes goes through some of our folks. And if you're anti-hunting, that's cool, whatever, everybody to their own. But it's really important to point out that hunters have been some of the most important conservationists, at least in the history of our country. And there's always going to be these jerky a-hole people that just want to blow away everything. But responsible hunting, most of those folks, in my experience, those are some of the strongest conservationists I've encountered in the ocean, on land, and those are folks that they might want to shoot a deer, but they don't want to eliminate deer, right? They want to be able to hunt deer, and they want to or get their own food instead of buying it from a Chinese supermarket or something like that. So I would caution if you sort of have a gut reaction that hunters are messed up, maybe table that and let's discuss it over the course of the semester. But in this case, these hunters were saying, I want to kill, right? And so there was this fermentation going on and all this fomenting of we should be able to hunt. And so the environmental community in California got wind of that, and they said, whoa, we gotta head this off at the pass. So they created a proposition, Proposition 117, that said, by the way, there's never, ever, 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 ever going to be sport hunting in the state of California for mountain lions. Just to be clear. Oh, by the way, and also one of the reasons we've been having some problems is because these populations are getting bigger and they don't have enough habitat. So it also provided a large amount of money for conservation groups or different state agencies to acquire land, more parkland, more open space to bolster mountain lion habitat. So it both said no sport hunting and gave money for the acquisition of parklands and stuff. It passed. Woo! Then the hunters got really PO'd. So then they came back with another proposition, because that's how the proposition thing works. Even though people said never, ever, 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 if you decide, yeah, I want to now, you can do it, right? And so the hunters came back with their own proposition, 197, in 1996, and they said, well, let's just be able to hunt a little teeny bit. And it was whopped. It was summarily quashed. Because there's so many people that aren't hunters, so many people that are urban dwellers now in California, that the hunters had essentially no lobby. Okay, let's get back to talking about the management history here. Okay, here we go. So predators, these things are predators. We don't like predators, generally speaking, in our society, especially in the western U.S. So these are some recent pictures of people that are, you know, these are pictures outside of California and other states where it's legal to hunt mountain lions. And so these are just some images that people are proud of. And while I think it's important not to demonize hunters, there is definitely a strain that think that any predator is evil by definition. And so this is increasingly becoming a problem. So much so that Dr. Rodriguez in his 200 class he's teaching this semester is actually going to do a module just on this very subject. But this is an example. We see them all across the West where it's coyote killing time. Or in certain states now where federal protections have been lifted, it's wolf killing time. And the whole goal is to, over a short period of time, typically a weekend, kill as many predators as you can. You know, not because these guys are a particular problem to a conservation creature, not because they're causing problems for livestock, just to kill them. And so that is perhaps not the most effective strategy for managing wildlife. All right, now let's look at data. Woo, all that prep. Woohoo, let's look at data. So one of the key skills you guys are going to be working on in this class is not just the concepts and the ideas and the theories and stuff, but it's actually deepening your, and this is throughout many of our ESRM classes, but especially in Cons Bio, deepening your understanding of graphs, being able to interpret quantitative data, being able to make your own professional graphs. So here's a figure I want you to stare at for a minute. I'm going to ask you guys what you see, but first let me just orient you to this graph. So this is data as of this morning at 3 a.m. So this goes up to the end of 2014, so as of 3 weeks ago, in the state of California. Remember we started the depredation era in 1972. So the first data points here are 1972, and they go to 2014. The pink circles are depredation permits that were issued. The red triangles are actually individuals that were killed. So yeah, okay. So I'll just say that. I'll be quiet for a second. So stare at this, and I wanted to see if you guys see any patterns and can explain any of this difference we see. Okay. So more requests for the ability to kill them than actually individuals. Okay. If we want to have a lot of UFO sightings today, how might we go about getting a lot of UFO sightings today? Usually it's to talk about it. So if you tweet something about a UFO, if the LA Times runs a story about UFOs, instantly there'll be a gazillion more people report that they see UFOs. So yes, so that's what's going on in this little blip was, right? All of a sudden everybody's, mountain lion's dangerous, mountain lion's dangerous, woo, mountain lions, and then somebody sees a cat, And then, whoa, call 911, there's a mountain lion outside my house. Right? So that is absolutely driven by the media and the dialogue in the community. Note that it's not real, right? If it were real, you know, it just let's say, I don't know, something about the rainfall pattern or something got tweaky or something. If it was real, we would have seen the kill rates spike as well, right? Underneath, maybe not exactly as high, but we would have seen it spike. But they don't. They just they're just still going up. You know, there's a little bit. Things are always up a little years, down a little years, but generally pretty smooth. Okay, so that's good. What else? Any other patterns you guys see? Okay. You mean from the peak in the mid 90s kind of thing, like we're on a downhill, right? Okay, good. Right. So we had this again, this sort of mid 90s-ish to mid 2000s. We had this flurry of de facto kills of mountain lions. Okay, cool. Anything else? What might explain this? What might explain this pattern? Either the increase pattern or the hump pattern or the whichever one you want to talk about. Population. Look, I just happen to have population right there. Excellent. Good segue. Right. So this is on the now. So we would call this, right? This is the x-axis. This is the y-axis, right? So this red axis now is corresponding to the circle and the triangle images. So if we want to know the value for those figures, we're going to take that circle, let's say, and cruise over here to the left to get our value. In this case, this is called a double Y or a YY axis. And so we're using the same X, but now the quantity, the value is different. So in this case, this is humans, California population as of July 1 each year in millions. And so, right, so Alex proposed maybe population. Yeah, so that's what it, you know, the left half of the graph, it looked like that, right? Population's going up. These guys are going up. But, maybe. But then as we go into the right side of the graph, it's going down and population is continuing to rise. So maybe population has something to do with it, but there's something else must be going on too. Excellent. So it's not a static, the land use and the designation and the activity is not the same in 1970 as it is in 1990, as it is in 2010, let's say, right? Excellent. So yeah, there's a lot of potential things moving around, right? And with conservation biology, which is one subset of field biology, typically, there's all kinds of aspects to it. With laboratory science, everything is held constant. Nothing changes, right? And then we change one factor. So the experiment is changing one thing. It's the exact opposite when it comes to field biology or field conservation. Everything in the world is changing. Oh crap, it rained this year. Oh, it didn't rain that much this year. Oh, it got windy this week. Oh, it's not windy that week. So the difference in the field stuff is we hold one thing constant and everything else varies around, and we try to say if that explains some of the difference. So it's hard to do in this case. We have many things that are varying. So let's toss out some other ideas. So we have population, we have land use changes. Anything else? Anything else?
There's a drop in kills from maybe the 2008 recession.
Oh, okay. So maybe there's So then in the very maybe there's something with the economy going on. So maybe humans, I don't know, recreating outside or whatever is changed. Okay, good. So we have number of humans behavior, land use. Anything else?
Wildfires, loss of habitat.
Okay, so drought and fire and other stressors in terms of that kind of stuff. Julie? Possibly. Although that probably hasn't changed. So absolutely, yes, definitely people's perception of things have changed, but probably not massively wildly over a couple-year period. Changing prey base kind of stuff, maybe. Okay, excellent. Mike, or yeah.
Maybe that they're seeing now something used to see.
Ooh, interesting idea. Possibly, although we've been pretty intimate with them for a long time. So possibly, I would think that would maybe be one more like maybe from the 70s to 2000. I'm not sure that they would suddenly all across the state all respond really rapidly, but good idea.
There's fewer kills because there's fewer mountain lions.
Ah, right. So another key thing here. This is all assuming, just like fisheries data, this is all assuming that everything is, you know, when we first look at this, we go, oh yeah, we focus on our take from the population and assume that the underlying abundances that we're talking about are roughly the same. And that's a huge assumption, right? This thing, just as of a couple years before when this data starts, we've been killing as many as 350 a year, right? This is 0 or 1 or 2, and the peak year here looks to be about 150, right? So the peak year in the modern era is, you know, less than half of what the peak year was in the active. So we were probably kicking these guys' butts into the ground and everywhere, shape, or form. So there was probably it has been, the population's been growing, right? And so initially, if we nuked everything, a couple guys can come back right here and nobody cares, because right here, nobody goes here and it's all nice and pretty and they got things to eat and this and that. But then, because they're asocial, remember, we can't pack 100 in 1 mile, right? That the next guys that come along, she's gonna want to disperse, or he's gonna want to disperse. And so at some point we start to saturate the available potential easy places to live. And then they start maybe coming into contact with us. Maybe that's what's going on here in this initial part of this loop, right? We're going through time and, you know, not a lot of change. And then something seems to have happened in the mid-late 80s where it started going up. So we don't know for sure, but at least it's sort of consistent with that idea that maybe the population was extremely artificially suppressed, and now they're getting back to some sort of carrying capacity or something like that. And then, so I'll just note that, right, you guys called these things, so here are these couple arrows here. Here's Prop 117, the environmentalist proposition. Here's Prop 197, right, which was the hunters' attempt to really strongly rally, and that's where we see these, in the immediate lead up to that, that's where we see all these claims of reports of needing to shoot mountain lions and stuff. And then this is right when we had the video I just showed you, and then a few months later, we had that actual death that happened in Orange County. And the Orange County one was a freaky one. So it scared a lot of people. I showed you that newspaper article about the guys with guns. So it seemed, we don't know because the person's dead, but what seems to have happened in looking at the wounds on the person, the guy had a flat tire. He was riding a mountain bike, had a flat tire, and was apparently he was crouched down and was in the process of popping off his tire and changing his tire. So he was really low. So when he was attacked, he was bit on the upper back and on the back of the head, and that's what killed him. So if he was riding his bike, it wouldn't have probably happened that way, or he'd have been scratched on the front and different things. So it seems pretty clear that that's what happened. In that case, this one individual was killed, drug off the side of the bike path, and then another person came by a little bit later, and the mountain lion tried to attack that person. So they went and they killed that individual, and they found the human tissue in his digestive tract. So that one, like, whoa, everybody was like, what? Mountain lions, what? So that appears to have driven the second spike that Julie was talking about in the mid 2000s. I don't remember. I don't remember that. It was a public open space. I don't remember the name of it though. But I could tell you in a second. I could look it up. Yeah. All right, cool. So there we go. So excellent. So that's what you guys need to do. So we're going to start showing data. When you guys get a paper, when you guys get one of our readings, stare at the graphs for a second. Sometimes the graphs will be really complicated and okay, but your goal with this class is not just to interpret the words of the readings or the slides, but actually to be able to look at data and you guys be able to interpret it. You tell me what it means. What's the conclusion? Does this support the hypothesis? Does it not? Does it support it but also imply X, Y, and Z or not? So we'll be working on that throughout the semester. Good. Next, let's make sure everybody knows what a mountain lion is, so you guys can all become mountain lion experts and identify these things, okay? So, this is a bobcat. right here. A gazillion people have told me this is a mountain lion. Bobcats have, first and foremost, spots all over them, right? First, they're more like house cat size. They're not like this guy size on the table here. They're house cat sized, and they have spots all over them. And there's other things too. They have these little kind of bobs on the top of their ears and stuff. But basically, spots are the most important thing. Bobcat. Yeah, I'll just say that. Okay. Okay. A couple of the factors that might explain the variance. We don't know, but one of the things that you guys talked about. So here's an example of maybe why we're seeing more mountain lion encounters, and we'll show some more identifying characteristics in a second. This is of an old plan now, but this is an example of proposed different urban development in the San Francisco Bay Area and different options to get the same amount of square footage for industry and housing and stuff like that. So if nothing was done, when this is now more than a decade old, but when this was generated, if we don't do anything, after a couple decades, the black was going to be all urbanized, essentially. Then here are some other smart growth options where we could try 1 or 2 or 3, and the point is more sucked in, right? More sucked in. Generally speaking, over the last many decades, we haven't been super smart about our growth. So the general approach has been more like this. And of course, you guys can identify 30,000 things that can go wrong with this. In the context of our conversation with mountain lions, this is by definition bringing us more likely into contact with these creatures, right? So our basic land use is a key driver as to why we're having interactions with these guys. The next is this. The next is the variable prey base. There exists no good data back in the 1800s for deer. So this comes from basically talking with a bunch of these guys from Fish and Game, and old guys that were like 70 and 80 years old when we were talking to them in the early 2000s, and just sort of using best expert opinion. And this is what we think happened with deer. Deer comprise about 70% of mountain lions' diet. So they will take that poodle I just showed you, right? And they will take some rabbits and stuff. But if given their druthers, they would much prefer to eat deer. So let's talk about deer for a second. So this is again very qualitative. This is also another example of an increasingly important area of study in conservation biology, which is we don't have a perfect scenario, either because we weren't there back in time, or because we don't have the money, or because the tribe won't allow us into a sacred land, whatever it is. And so this would be an example of what we might call best professional judgment, where you get some experts together and that have studied the problem, but maybe not exactly like we're talking about, and get people talking and come to what we think is a reasonable consensus. And so that's what's going on here. So this is a quasi-quantitative scale here, right? It's not meant to be exactly linear. But we go from very little to common to just everywhere. And what we see here, starting in 1800, we believe that back in the day, deer were relatively abundant, the most favorite prey of mountain lion, relatively abundant. Boo, 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 boo. And then, boom, what happens around this 1850 mark? Oh, I'm sorry, it was a what? Pest? They were, but there was a huge thing that happened. That's right. We started the San Francisco 49ers. No. So we had the gold rush, right? The 1849ers, Sutter's Mill. And so immediately all these people rushed to California. These people know nothing. These people are completely ignorant. So in my wetland class, when we talk about the history of San Francisco Bay, we talk about all those old boats that were left. So literally ships would sail into San Francisco Harbor, and the crew would run away from the ships and run up to the Sierras thinking they were going to be rich. So all of downtown San Francisco now is all built on basically old sailing ships, because they just stuck there, and then when we eroded the hillsides because of our strip mining, it sedimented in the bay, and so the boats went from being on water to being in mud. So all these guys go out, and they don't know anything. They buy a shovel, they buy Levi's jeans, and they buy guns. and they go out and they start digging, and they get hungry, and so this huge influx of humans start to knock down the deer population all across the state, but especially in the Sierras. Deer population crashes. We have a massive drought that we'll talk about later maybe, that was before right now was the craziest drought in California's history. And that leads a lot of animals to be stressed and populations to go even further down. And then we come out of the drought here, so we're kind of nosing up. And now people have kind of figured out stuff. We've introduced cattle around places like, we're starting to introduce them out on the Channel Islands and this and that. And people are starting to grow their own beef and meat. So now we don't need to hunt as many deer. And then we kind of have another little thing here, and then we go up. So basically, we've been on this trajectory for a long time, which is fewer and fewer hunters. People aren't going out and killing deer. So the deer have been on this huge upswing for a long, long time, until basically people come back from World War II and start hunting them. And then what's this other big thing that happens right here? This big dip in deer population across the state. It seems like it maybe started in 1972-ish. Mountain lions are now protected. So one of the factors is not only do we make all this habitat empty of mountain lions, and then in the early 1970s turn them loose in there, we also built up this huge prey base. And the deer are like stupid and fat and walking around, hey, hey. So there's all this candy around for them. There's all these places for them to live. And so all this stuff seems to have all come together. So there probably was not one factor. There's multiple things going on. Another central theme of our class is that it can be hard to disentangle these things. And was it the deer, or was it the this or that? It's all the stuff together. So now we're still elevated in terms of our deer population compared to what we think the historic background was, but it seems as if mountain lions and things are starting to drive them back down to more normal levels. Questions about that? Make sense? Cool. All right. Here is some, that was qualitative data. Here's some quantitative data. So my question for you is, does this support what I just told you? This is data from Fish and Game. This is actual confirmed kills. And so we're going from low to high here. And this is the sort of peach-colored circles are deer, adult deer. And then down here, we didn't start recording pig, wild boar until recently. And for some reason, I have emails into the state of California. They have not posted any data since 2011. But nevertheless, that's boar. Mountain lions will take boar if they can, but deer is what they really want to eat. Okay, so stare at that for a second. Who says yes? Raise your hand. No, but really raise your hand. Okay, so it looks like about 3/4. Okay, and other people said no. Okay, so somebody said, Kyle, did you say yes? I had a bunch of hands here. Riley, did you raise your hand? Okay, so why do you say yes?
Because you see a decline in the deer population, although it's not right at 1972, a little bit before it drops off in the 60s.
Right. Yeah, so this seems to be what's going on, right? So this wasn't meant to be a trick question or something, right? So sometimes the data like this seems relatively straightforward, at least for the hypothesis you're testing. Sometimes it's awesome and really clear. Sometimes it's not. So you guys have to, over the semester, I hope you guys are going to increase your confidence in looking at these figures and being able to say, it means this, doesn't mean that. Cool. So yeah, so things we're going up, and now things seem to be on the downhill slide. Right. Okay, getting back to IDing things, these are all things that people have told me are mountain lions. So this is again, what's this? Bobcat, right? How do you know it's a bobcat? Right, good. So we have these. So in this case, we have a couple different versions. So we have this nice little cool black and white eye patch. But basically, he's spotty. And then, this is the giveaway, right? This is the giveaway. This little teeny tail. It is not 1/3 of the overall length of the critter. Okay. There is, okay. All right, what's that? Coyote, yes. Another thing people constantly tell me is a mountain lion. Not, it's basically a dog, right? It's a little dog. It's got ears. Doesn't have a long, giant tail. It's a dog-like tail. It's a kind of poofy tail, and it doesn't look like anything like a mountain lion. So here are the key characteristics. Now, the one confusing thing about bobcats are juvenile mountain lions. So juvenile mountain lions are like this guy right here. When they're first born, they do have some limited spotting on their it's not the same as bobcats. You saw bobcats are more like cheetahs and leopards, kind of everywhere. But these guys have some light spotting, mostly on their back, that will gradually go to just the even brown color. But in theory, just because someone says there's spots, that isn't necessarily a 100% definitive condition. But obviously, check out the proportional size of this guy's paws. He's obviously a cat, and he has this big, giant, long tail. Again, here's another shot, the big tail. Cat-like head. So the most important characteristic that you guys need to know, anybody needs to know if we're wondering if this was a mountain lion or not, are the paws. So I'm going to pass these guys around now. So we're going to next work on how you guys can identify. Because almost everybody, whenever we go and do an investigation, somebody says this mountain lion killed my poodle or whatever the heck. Because usually they're gone. I mean, maybe if you had a photograph or if they ran up against a fence and they left some skin or fur, in theory you could do some kind of genetic analysis. But typically what we're doing is we're looking for tracks. So the most important thing that you need to know is what the paws are like. Okay? And so that's the key thing. So I have some couple different track casts and things I'm going to pass around for you. So I'm just gonna pass them all around. We'll start these guys this way, and we'll start these guys this way. And you guys just take a look and pass them around. Okay, so let's take a look at what the tracks are like. Oh, look, here's another one. Look, bobcat versus mountain lion. One's small, one's big. This sounds super obvious. Yeah, it should be obvious, but people get confused all the time. So. Again, not a bobcat. You can see the juvenile's length of his tail. Okay, so here we go. Tracks. Let's talk about tracks. The most likely thing a cat would be confused with is a dog. So a feline and a canine. So here we go. Let's take a look at this. So here's some pads. Here's some tracks these guys have left. So on the left we have a mountain lion. On the right we have a dog. So the first thing to notice is that dogs leave claw marks when they are walking, when they are just doing their normal do. Your dog, who has a dog here? Okay, cool. They can't retract their claws, right? They're out all the time. And in fact, if you have an indoor dog or a dog that's not running a lot, you sometimes have to trim your dog's nails, right? Because they don't wear them down fast enough in, say, in the house. So the first thing is these guys have these little indents where they step. Now, and then cats, of course, have retractable claws. If a cat is running very fast and it's slippery, let's say it's snow, let's say it's I don't know, a wet surface, they can extend their claws for extra traction. So it is possible for them, but that would be a completely different type of track. That'd be a a sprinting type gait. But under normal conditions, if we see these things, dead giveaway. It's a canine, dog or a coyote in this case. Next thing is let's look at the pad. Let's look at the heel of your hand. That's another key thing. So for this, if we look at the mountain lion, it makes a mountain lion, mountain lion, mountain lion, right? So right here we have this what looks like boink, 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 boink. The top of the M is not a pyramid. The top of the M is a indentation, a valley, if you will. Whereas on the dog or coyote, it's not like that at all. It's much more pointed. Oh, I just said that, right? So the point versus no point. And then the last thing is how the toes line up. How the toes line up. So when we look at the canines, if we were to draw a line from the apex to the side of the pad, it's going to go straight across and shoot out between the digits. And same on the other side. So it's going to make a nice X. X marks the spot. X marks the doggy do. Whereas with the cat, it's going to be aligned differently. It will, of course, cross, but they're going to cross at the same, between the same digits, and it's not going to be a typical letter X. It's going to be sort of a wonky, funky thing. Okay? If we were tracking animals, you would need all these things. Usually the claws are a dead giveaway, but sometimes it didn't, that's under an ideal perfect track. So in reality, you'd need all these things. So just like other things in Khan's bio, yeah, we have some characteristic or some key fact. You should totally know that key fact. But don't ignore the other things, because sometimes you really need to take a weight of evidence approach to figure something out. So don't ever just rely on the key, the default go-to. You should know what the go-to characteristic or factor is, but you should also know some of the secondary things as well. So let's check it out. A little quick quiz. So how about this thing on the left? Dog or cat? Dog. And why? Claws. Okay, how about this thing right over here? A little bit harder, right? This is like a super nice track. Right? It's a little bit harder to see. Dog, got to vote for dog. Okay, yeah. So there we go. So if we look close, we'll see these guys here. Okay, and then we have, again, it's more of a triangle, right? Type pad. Let's try this over here. So here's our mountain line. If we try to do that cross, it's not gonna make a nice cross in the middle. How about up here? I got to vote for a cat. Anybody else say cat? Okay, right, good, cat. So if we look at it, it's turned on its side now. The critter was going from the left of the screen to the right of the screen. If we look at it, we can see this. Well, one, we don't have the claw dentitions, but then we have this M shape guy there. Cool. All right. Ready. So there we go. We'll talk about a couple continuing challenges here, and then I'll tell you another story. So this is an ongoing thing. As we saw from yes, it appears as if the incidence of mountain lion-human interactions to the point where we need to kill the mountain lion appears to be on a downhill slope, for now at least. But this is an issue that does not go away. I could have ripped 3 articles from the last 2 months and they would all say the same thing. It's always, oh my God, look at this, and the evening news goes in and somebody says, my poor dog, and it's almost the same narrative. And so this is not going away. For example, I'll point out this one right here in the middle from 2005. This is after our story. That story happened in 2004. The question was, we started more mountain lions again. Was that the mountain lion we saw before? Probably not. But because we didn't take any genetic analysis and didn't do any typing, we don't know if this was a different individual, a sister, a brother, whatever. So here's an example of that.
A mountain lion like this one on the prowl in the Southland foothills. The big cat killed a German shepherd and left another bad.
What's going on with this? Let's try this one.
Parkman Fish and Game officers shot and killed a mountain lion.
Playing. Okay. Well, I'll just tell you about some examples then. So here's another example. In this case, this is evidence that we can do stuff better. All right. So you don't just have to roll in and bang and off the guy. So in this case, this is in Altadena. This is a couple years after that situation we had. So again, another thing, it was being shown live on the news. And so the news helicopters are following and they're getting live footage, and the mountain lion is going through people's garbage cans and going around their pool and all this kind of stuff. And they're like, oh my God, we hope he eats someone, right? They don't say it out loud, but that's what they really want to have happen, right? So ratings go up. And in this case, Fish and Game wardens came up, located the animal, took a tranquilizer gun, and shot, I don't remember if it was him or her, but shot the animal with the tranquilizer, went to sleep, boom, no problem. Picked up, relocated, not a problem. So we can do this correctly. It need not end with little kids saying, don't hurt the poor mountain lion, right? We can learn from our mistakes. And indeed, yeah, so then I'll tell you about. Okay, so then there's this one. This one should play. Let's see if we play this one. Ha, right. Okay, it won't, so I'll just tell you about it anyway. I'll post these videos for you guys after. In this case, does anybody remember this one in Santa Monica a couple years ago? So this was an animal that ended up several miles into downtown Santa Monica on 2nd Street, right? Almost to the 3rd Street Promenade. And this is a cell phone image from a janitor who was inside a building, inside an atrium, and was going whoo 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 whoo, and he's rolling out his cleaning supplies, and looks down, and there's inside the enclosed building, there's a mountain lion. And then he said a swear word and then went and called the cops. So a huge thing. So there were police officers mobilized outside the building and all this and that, and guys had shields and beanbag again. It was like World War II, and there's all this stuff coming in, and they shot it and killed it. So it was unfortunate. And one of our friends from the National Park Service that works on these guys full time was on his way there with a tranquilizer gun. He was a little bit away, and he could have just put her down, but it didn't happen. That was a particularly sad event because on top of everything else, turns out this individual had some genetic material from outside of the Santa Monica Mountains, which we'll get to touch on really quick, but we'll talk about it later in the semester when we talk about roadkill fragmentation and stuff. Our population in the Santa Monicas are being increasingly isolated, and this was evidence that there was a little teeny tiny bit of genetic diversity coming in, and that would have been good if this individual could have passed on their genes to the population, but it didn't happen. But then the good thing was, so unfortunately this animal was killed. How it got into the middle of Santa Monica and then into this building, nobody knows. It was a freaky, weird thing, right? It would be like a mountain lion showing up right, not even here. It would be like if we were in, Oxnard, and all of a sudden a mountain lion showed up in like, what? How would that happen? So there was a lot of confusion, and again, the police were given a lot of flack, and again, the Santa Monica Police Department had not trained for mountain lion extractions from an office building, right? But to their credit, after the fact, they called a meeting with a bunch of experts to seek their input. So, hey, next time this happens, we don't want to do this. And then we told them things like, well, you probably shouldn't shoot at the beanbag because that kind of pisses it off, and stuff like that. So again, learning. Nobody's perfect, but we're improving, and that's the general theme that seems to be happening across a lot of these cities. They'll have one of these unfortunate encounters, but then they'll take that and they'll try to turn it into a positive and to avoid that in the future. And all kinds of other stories are popping out all the time. Has anybody heard about this controversy? So we have a panel, a commission that determines how many fish you guys can take, and determines how many bear tags you guys can take, and determines the policies and this and that. So Fish and Game have a bunch of staff, and they look at the data and they say, oh, we think we can take this many bear this year, or what have you, right? And they make recommendations. But those regulations, those decisions are actually voted upon by this appointed commission. And so in 2012, this individual, who is the head of the commission, got into a lot of flack by going on a hunting trip outside California, mind you. This was not in California. Went outside California, shot a mountain lion on his vacation, basically as a recreational activity, and then posed for some pictures and tweeted it all up and said, this is awesome. Started this huge controversy. People said this guy should not be the one regulating these individuals. And then he came back and he said, what are you talking about? I go to Vegas and gamble. I don't gamble in California. Oh, maybe, I don't remember his analogy, but it doesn't work with the Indian reservation. But he said, I don't gamble in California, but I can go and gamble in Vegas. And so he said, therefore it's okay. So lots and lots of energy and debate went into this. And you guys might want to think about that if you think that was okay or not for the person in that position to do that type of thing. But no shortage of controversy. And then, okay, so then I'll tell you, just to prove that I'm an idiot, just like a lot of us can be at times. So this is a story, and then we'll finish with a couple examples, and then we'll end it for today. So this was a friend of the family is over in this place in Westlake Village, and they're walking a nightly walk, and they claim they see it and get a cell phone call, and they say, "Oh, there's a mountain lion here." And I said, "What?" It says a mountain lion walking Upper Street. I said, "Oh yeah, it's not a mountain lion." So they said, "Oh, it's a mountain lion." I said, "Okay. Does it have a big tail?" "No, I don't think so. Not a big tail." I'm like, "Oh God, okay. Yeah, no, it's whatever. It's a big dog or something." No, it's a mountain lion." And I said, "No, it's not a mountain lion." And so long story short, all back and forth, and all these things ensue and everything. So finally, I get in trouble, and so I have to go check. So I said, "Okay, fine. Next time I'm over there in that neighborhood, I'll go look and stuff." I said, "Okay, thanks." So I go over there, and again, it's just like campus, right? We have this open space behind it, and there's urbanization right here. And so where this person was saying was here and here, and where this one place where they said, I go up and I notice this. So there's definitely a trail, human hiking trail, but also looks to be maybe like a game trail, like a deer trail kind of thing, right? And I'm walking around and I'm thinking, damn it, because it's sort of looking like it could be a mountain. I just wanted to look there for like 30 seconds and go, no, you're totally silly. There's no mountain lion. But as I'm looking, I'm like, this looks kind of mountain lion-y, right? It's sort of mountain lion-y. So walking in, and then I start seeing these large oak branches, which are going over the trail. Perfect place for these guys to chill out like that, right? With their paws in front and watch, and then, go. And so, darn it, so I'm walking around, and then, okay, so then I walk the trail out, and it comes out over here, and this is one of the places this lady said that she saw mountain lion. I'm like, okay, and I look down here, and I see this. So, what do you guys think that? You guys think that means anything? I know. This is what the tracks really look like in the real world. It's basically it's basically impossible to tell from you have to get down and put your eyeball close to the dirt and everything. But these are actually 3 mountain lion tracks. So I was looking at this going, dang it, is that really right? It's probably not. It's probably a dog, and so it's almost impossible for you guys to tell. But there's an M right here, and so this guy was walking this way, and then this one was walking that way, and this one I think was walking this way. So almost impossible to tell, right? Unless you're really there. So the best way to do tracking is when you have light at an angle, like early morning, let's say. So you have these nice shadows that these little teeny indentations really show up. But so I found that, and then I walked another couple feet and was looking. And so then I found scat, and like, damn it, So then I had to go tell this person that, oh God, there's a mountain lion here. It had it, eat crow. So I'm walking out. As I'm walking out, I see this culvert. And so this is like middle of summer. It's crazy hot and everything. And so I decided that, hey, that maybe a mountain lion would be in there. So I said, I should go look, right? So I started to walk in here, and it's maybe hard to tell from this picture, but this is maybe like, like this. So I'm bent over. So it's not a lot of space. And I'm walking up this thing, and there's a road above it. This is a rain storm drain thing. And so I'm walking in, and it goes in a little bit, then it turns like 45 degrees and turns. So I'm walking, and as I'm starting to walk, I have my camera, because I thought, I'll take a picture of a mountain lion. And I thought, that's kind of stupid after I'm already inside, because I thought, what if there actually is a mountain lion here? And I said, well, maybe I should go out. And then as I'm starting to go out, I start to hear this, I'm like, what's that? And I scream, and I try to stand up, but it's, I'm small, and I smack my head, and I fall down, and I see stars. I'm like, ah! Like flash to the camera, boo, 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 scare the thing away, like that's gonna do anything. And then I realized that it goes, woo, and it stayed constant. And I realized that's like it's not a mountain lion. So I come out, and there was a UPS delivery truck on the top. So I told you, it's all about the delivery guys. So my head is bleeding and a huge lump, and I'm really angry, and I walk, and I get to the top, and there's like these 5 gardener guys, and they're like, eyes are wide open, like, what the hell is that guy doing in there? So So on top of everything, I had to eat crow that there actually were mountain lions right there, and I had a massive, massive headache for a long time. So everybody can get this wrong. These guys. So I was going to get a picture to show you one of your alumnus, who's now a Fish and Game warden, just showed me a picture the other day of a mountain lion in a trailer park in Newbury Park up here that he was called to deal with. So these guys, we live with them all the time. They're here on campus. We virtually never see them, right? Almost never see them. The National Park Service, who's been tracking this data, 8 points on an individual every day, some of them for years, less than a percent, I forget the exact number, but less than, I want to say it's 0.7% of all of the data locations are in people's backyards or private property. So they're skirting along, they're right there, and you basically never see them. Most people will never ever see one in the wild and will be right next to it. In fact, we've had some of your fellow students in years past have found some hiking around, dead ones. So they're all around, they're part of our landscape, they are not a threat to you. If I had a 1-year-old, I probably wouldn't just let that 1-year-old go teetering up the path. But other than that, there really is honestly no reason to be concerned. Much more dangerous to get in our car, to get in the bus and commute home than anything from these mountain lions. But they have become a really key conservation symbol. So they've factored into a lot of recent goings-on. So we'll just end with this. This, for example, this is an older version of one of our radio collars. This was from the very first Puma the National Park Service tagged well over a decade ago now. So P stands for Puma, Puma 1. We're now up to almost 30 individuals have been tracked. And so this is there's a battery in here. This goes around their neck, and is designed such that it won't come off. It can't. If you put it on correctly, they won't get. It's not that they can't breathe. It's like a nice necklace that they can't pull off, and will work for, depends on how the battery works and the transmitter, but work for about 1 year to 2 years. And we can have it turned on and track where they're going every single minute of the day. That would eat up the battery in about a month. So the typical approach is we put one of these collars on these individuals and then set it to ping twice in the daytime, because they don't move very much in the daytime, and then 6 times at night. And then if the collar does not move, if the collar stays still for more than 8 hours, it starts transmitting frequently. And so that's a concern that the animal might be dead or really sick. So it's like, hey, come, and then we can get them. Some of these are, as I've been describing, are GPS-based collars. Some of them are just telemetry-based, just radio frequency. So you have to triangulate with old school, boop, 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 boop kind of thing. And so our colleagues at the Park Service have been doing this on several different species, primarily mountain lions and bobcats, but also coyotes for a long time. We'll talk about this data later, but just to give you a flavor, this is the kind of thing you can get from this. And several of you guys that have had our intro GIS, has anybody not had GIS yet? So if you guys have not had GIS, I would strongly encourage, if you're an ESRM major, you have to take it, so you'll take it anyway. But if you guys are not an ESRM major, I would really seriously suggest that you guys take that. It's really becoming an essential skill for the kind of work that we do. In any event, it's just a system for pulling together data spatially. And so what all these different circles represent are the territories of different individuals at different times as measured by their collar. So we let them go around a lot, go around, 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 and then we put a wall around it or an area around it. And what you see is generally there's very little, here's the 101. Most of the circles are down here. They don't go out in Oxnard. They don't swim. They don't go up to Simi. They don't go into Santa Monica, really. We had no evidence for a long time. Now we've had a couple incidents because we've had an individual killed on the 101. We have one confirmed crossing, but basically almost no crossing. So now all the energy is to try to improve this wildlife crossing here at Liberty Canyon. We think it's going to cost about $10 million, but there's a lot of different groups working on it now. But the idea is this all comes from telemetry data. These guys have become an incredible conservation success. Did anybody see this article in the New York? Well, it's all over the place, but it started in the National Geographic. Did anybody see that? Out of curiosity, raise your hand if you saw it. A few people. Okay. So this was a photographer from National Geographic. So one of our mountain lions got to Griffith Park, which is, interior. It's still technically in the Santa Monica Mountains, but it's interior LA, right? It's through urban areas. He had to cross the 405, lots of roads. Somehow he did it. And so we got him in a camera trap initially in the park. And so then our colleagues from the National Park Service went and collared him. And so we knew that he would, by definition, he was kind of cruising around. So this was the culmination of about 9 months of work, 9 months of camera traps that this National Geographic photographer set up. And this is the primo shot with the Hollywood sign in the background, right? So we have, and there's all this play on words about cougars. There's cougars in LA, right? And all that kind of stuff. And so, very iconic image, and it's being used in all kinds of fundraising campaigns now and all this kind of stuff to preserve wild cats and engage the public and all this and that. And you can see this guy has his radar collar. Sounds great, right? This is what the individual looked like last year. So this guy was dying when this picture was taken. Turns out he lived, but he was about ready to die. So what's going on here? He has this nodendric mange, and he's really sickly. Check him out. He's got these, knowing nothing about mountain lions, you look at him, he looks kind of messed up, right? He does not look like that guy, right? Not pretty, smooth, creamy brown fur. He looks like this. So this is coming from, anybody know why this guy looks this way? Right. Second generation rodenticides. So the new generation of poisons we've invented, originally by New Zealand conservation biologists in New Zealand to kill rodents on islands, because our traditional rat poisons were not working. Rodents have adapted to that. Coumadin and all these other things we originally used, they don't work. So this next generation was invented to deal in particular with conservation concerned rodents, to get these exotic things out of these places. They work really, really well. They work so well that once the critter dies, the compounds stay active. In our case, unfortunately, the state of California thinks that that's fine to let that stuff out. So you can go to Home Depot right now and buy Decon and buy all this stuff, and anybody, you, little kid, a pest control expert, whoever, can buy this stuff and throw it outside of your door. These substances are used around campus as we speak, right? So what happens is they're really effective at killing the mouse, killing the rat, but then the predator, the scavenger, eats the rat. And then the thing that eats the scavenger, and these things accumulate. And so what's going on now, we first saw this with coyotes when about 6 or 7 years ago, when you cut them open, actually more than that now, but when you cut them open, there wasn't anything to dissect. They were essentially liquefied. Their organs were liquefying. So what's going on is they're bleeding to death. What you're seeing here is a secondary characteristic of this critter being really, really sick. One of the consequences of this poison in mammals, in carnivores, is it screws with their immune system. It screws with their ability to fight off this infection. This infection comes from these little mites that these guys have all over themselves all the time. And normally they're cool. If they're healthy, no problem. Maybe a scratch every now and then or something, no big deal. But when they're sick like this, they lose the ability to fend this off. So essentially this skin infection, if you will, is giving them real itchy skin, and their hair is starting to fall out and stuff like that. So when our colleagues saw a picture of this, they rushed over. Because he has a collar on him, they could tell where the hell he was, found him, gave him a chelation therapy, so essentially sucked his blood out and filtered this crud out and gave him a transfusion, basically, and he got better. And the most recent pictures show that he's looking okay. That's a temporary fix, right? However, he got that poison in downtown LA and Hollywood Bowl. Who knows where he got it from, right? He can get it tomorrow, right? So I can talk about these pesticides are bad, and people kind of go, eh. Or you can use an organism like this as a so-called umbrella species or a flagship species and say, oh, so pretty, right? And oh, so bad. Do you want it to be bad? So mountain lions are also this very iconic critter that you can use not just to raise money and stuff, you can actually argue for more effective conservation measures that would help more than just themselves. And we can't, it's hard to do that sometimes with a slime mold. It's hard to do that sometimes with a fungus, right? It's just harder. And so the last thing I'll say is if you guys have not seen a mountain lion, you should all go before the end of the semester. You should go check some out. So there's several on display. You can get within a foot or two at the Moore Park Zoo. Has anybody been to the Moore Park Zoo? It's cool. It's cool. So one of the best places in the world to learn animal handling. So people come from all around the world, harder to get into than the nursing program. It's a great program, and associate with that program, where they teach people to handle animals for zoos and for Hollywood and all that kind of stuff. They have a bunch of animals because they have to learn how to handle them. And so one of the things they have is they have several mountain lions. And so this is from about a foot away, and you can go check them out, and it costs $5. So it's a great little zoo. You can go take your little nephew or your brother or whatever and take them, and they do some little animal shows. So it's really cool. Okay, there's other things I can say, but I think I'll pause it there. So as a quick review, with regards to mountain lions as an example of the things we're going to learn about in this semester, the overall themes I want you guys to take away from this lecture is that it's hard to know what we mean by natural or reference or background, right? Unless we put a lot of work into it, right? If we didn't know the history of the management of mountain lions, we would have a completely different take on that up and downness, right? So we really have to work, and in many cases it's very hard to figure out what natural or background or what we would quote unquote expect means. Oh, low battery, perfect time to end the lecture. A large amount of California has been altered from what it used to be. And I know that sounds obvious, but it's important to state. Especially if we're going to be engaged with stakeholders and talk about this issue, we need to state all this stuff that might be obvious to us in a slide or two or in a minute or two and make sure everybody's on the same page. Relative to 1972, these interactions have been increasing. We seem to be on something of a downward slope at the moment, but on average, the big picture is it's more than they were a couple decades ago. Most of the confusion and claims that we see something as a mountain lion, not true, right? So there's a lot of challenges in conservation getting through to the real facts as opposed to the perceptions or people's emotions or what have you. And then in general, everything is improved when we have good data, good historic data, good tracking data, good dynamic data, good weather data. And that is one of our hardest challenges, is figuring out just how many things there are out there. As we go on and we talk about condors, as we go on and we talk about grass and all these other things, it's a real challenge. And having good data, and then, what we haven't talked here, but making decisions with imperfect information is oftentimes very difficult for us as scientists to do that. We want to say, we don't know, 95% confidence interval, we're going to wait, we're going to see, but in many cases we don't have the luxury of time. So that's where conservation biology differs from more traditional biology or laboratory-based stuff or basic research. So, okay, cool. So I could say more, but I won't. Thanks, you guys. I will see you guys next on Tuesday, right? Next Tuesday. Good. Thanks, you guys.